Hello, and welcome to my updated guide for AP Powertech, which is Advanced Prototype. I will be condensing the guide more than my previous guide. However, it won't be as short as my quick PvP guides. So if you're just looking for quick information, definitely check out those. I will be updating those that need it in the near future. If you've seen my previous guide to Powertech, which still holds very relevant information, this one is more basic and straight to the point to avoid overwhelming anyone with a bunch of info. First thing first, we will talk a bit about accuracy and its importance to this spec. I have a whole video dedicated to accuracy. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. I will leave important videos in the description and the comments. While accuracy is really only helping us with raw shot, it's important to understand why we want to always land raw shot. Raw shot ignores 30% of the target's armor, prevents 6 heat if your bleed is on them, and refreshes your bleed if it's present. It gives you an energy load stack for energy burst and helps maintain heat issues with every 6 seconds scanning a free raw shot with rotational abilities. In a perfect scenario of sustained damage, a raw shot will be your highest percentage of damage for a single target, and if it's AoE, it will likely be your dot due to constant refreshes. With this knowledge, you can choose to run accuracy or not. Just know it's a vital part of your sustain, heat management, and ability to take down heavier armor targets. Our personal recommendation is 5% to negate tank's debuff at the bare minimum. Moving on to another vital thing to learn about AP is prototype particle accelerator. Every 6 seconds or 4 global cooldowns, you can reset raw shot. You can delay the usage of raw shot, but no longer than the 3rd GCD. For example, using 1, 2, 3, 4 as global cooldowns, and every time you hit 4s, when you would want to proc raw shot. And once you've procced raw shot, restart and count 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can delay raw shot use up to the 3rd GCD, and that's it. You could use it on the first one, you could use it on the second one, the third one. Sometimes you'll need to do it on the third, and sometimes you won't. It is just something that you should keep in mind of for sustained damage, and it's basically how AP should be thought of. Your bread and butter is your particle accelerator, constantly trying to proc it. This is how you maintain your damage and keep your burst up, but also your sustained damage and keeping your heat low. Rapid shots will be required every now and then to deal with your heat, and Leap is a great addition to help with this if it's not needed to get close. And it can be used twice, so it counts as 2 GCDs. So if you really need to vent some heat, Leap is a great ability to use. Now that we know the basics on the spec and how it functions, it's important to understand how its burst works and your optional tactical to amplify the ease of use. With the addition of powered detonator as tactical, or as a tactical, AP has become a spec anyone can burst with. I am not talking about letting it rip with every button, but rather for large hit splats in a single global. That's what good AP burst is, and it's a very difficult to mitigate without guard. If you've seen any of my videos, I'm certain you've seen how quickly people go down and how it's often that you see 2 to 3 abilities hitting at once, doing upwards to 140k or more. This is specifically what I'm talking about, and this tactical makes doing that much easier, which I will explain how, and I will show you as I explain it. Whether it's the opener or just lining up for another burst, you have a few options. The first being with power yield and without. If you have power yield, you can just enroll burst to someone. Once you have 4 stacks, you will want to blow the energy burst for empowered thermal detonator for 16% increased damage. Ensure that your bleed and sunder is applied, then you can thermal detonator into power yield into energy burst. This will blow up thermal early, causing energy burst and thermal to do their damage at the same time. It also resets your rocket punch, helping with the heat reduction of these abilities. That's the main burst window that you can constantly do with the tactical. Without power yield, you can do the same thing, but without empowered thermal detonator, yielding weaker results, but still very strong. When this burst really starts to shine is when you have your bleed, sunder, and shoulder cannon with explosive fuel ready to go. For example, like an opener. Now I'll show you an opener for AP. You can do something like this on AP with power detonator. You can preload your stacks plus shoulder cannon. You should always do this, by the way. Thermal into punch and fuel. Retractable blade. Relics will probably have procced by this point. And then you can start unloading the shoulder cannon, which has its own GCD, by the way, so you want to be spamming that as you're doing this. Into energy burst, roll shot. But roll shot is optional here. It helps if you heat and your particle accelerator management. Into punch, which resets with tactical after you would have exploded thermal with energy burst. Into power yield, into energy burst, and then into just your standard rotation where you're trying to proc particle accelerator over and over. That would be like your PvE kind of like burst opener, but it's also the same pretty much opener that you would use if you were to just burst somebody flat out. You can use magnetic blast instead of punch, or use magnetic blast before you actually throw thermal to get the increased damage from shock trooper. However, I think it's a little bit better to usually save that for your sustained damage after and not pair it up with everything. Though you could do slightly more damage if you do get your shock trooper in that window. If we were to go into burst or opener without power detonator, things do change. For example, the same burst is the same but different at the same time. So give an example, the simple thermal detonator and power with yield burst, I guess. The combo basically that I previously just showed you. You would have Sunder and Retractable Blade already applied to throw thermal into energy burst. So running the tactical, it won't explode. This allows you to use power yield and energy burst. Again, thermal will explode on its timer about the same time the second energy burst would hit. This ends up being more direct burst and is often more damage. However, most players will do something when you have a thermal on them. Power detonator has another use of making it impossible to deny thermal detonator, and arguably makes it work using it up 10 times because of it. Now, going into burst opener from a PvE maximizing damage / no stops, it becomes different. However, it conflicts with how power detonator plays, so this isn't for that tactical. So you would preload, pre-proc, rel, flame sweep, thermal, retractable blade, fuel, shoulder cannon, energy burst, rel shot, yield, punch, energy burst, rel shot, mag, rel shot, so on, into the normal PAA management aggressively without using auto attack or leap until vent heat is used, and you will use that on the upcoming energy burst. Rel shot is used and a stack is wasted for heat management to upkeep the PAA to prevent heat from getting out of control. You can do this without proccing rel shot and not using rel shot in between. Most people in PvP won't live for it, so it's not something you will do very often or get to do the whole thing on someone. When I mention SC, I mean shoulder cannon, and with its own GCD, you should spam it along with your burst. I think I have explained its sustain and burst plenty enough to give everyone a basic understanding of how to play it and how its windows work. If you have more specific questions, leave a comment. I'll be happy to help. As for PvE and parsing, I took a few #1 parses on AP before the end of 6.0. While I can't help you with clearing raids, I can definitely help you squeeze more damage. Going into talent loadouts and why I choose what I do and the optional talents we have. If you're interested, just quickly finding out this info, as there will be a timestamp here, feel free to check out my quick PvP guide as it speeds all this up. We'll be covering hypotheticals here and explaining your options or why you made viable talents here. Starting off with 23, both Juggler and Retracted Refresh are very good. I have used both extensively this expansion, and if you want more AoE, Retracted Refresh is the move. It also has uses like popping static barrier via AoE, allowing an easier time to swap targets for bursting. Juggler, on the other hand, is a bit more unique because you can apply it to multiple people and refresh it with Shatter Slug, just like the AoE one, but it'll fall behind an actual AoE, like an actual AoE game, I guess you could say. While still good and comparable, it does better single target if you're trying to kill a tanky target with a double dot tick after every refresh. And it also makes Rail Shot more important than ever for sustained damage, as your bleeds will actually compete with your Rail Shot overall damage contribution much easier with the bleed / PvE tactical. And all ease of use, Juggler is great. If you don't feel comfortable on this mech, I recommend it first. Once you know what you're doing, you're going to understand how to properly target swap and upkeep your bleeds without losing damage, then I would start Attracted refresh. For all dot specs outside of madness and hatred, really, you should never delay burst or instant abilities or particle accelerator in this example to tab dot. It's simply not worth it. This is also going for lightning. Mind you, don't delay abilities or dots. Tab to do your rotation on someone else and maintain previous one with AoE. Rinse, repeat. The third option isn't even worth mentioning, so definitely do not take that. Now to 27. While the other two seem cool, the value is just too high. There's some niche cases like Arena against other melee. You may not feel the need to run leap, but rather reel and rattle for an extra CC. Pulling someone out of guard range is incredibly useful, and the CC that comes with it can be really helpful in securing something. However, leap is generally and always my recommendation. Double grapple is, I don't know. There's use cases. It's just not that great. Once you've used them, you basically never have to again. So definitely always take a leap. Going to 39, we have Empowered Thermal Detonator. This is hands down the strongest thing you have for single target burst. And if you take the meme AoE TD tactical, it can hit really hard. My personal gripe with it is that most players with any sense at all will have taunts, AoE taunts, and AoE DR, making it way less impactful. Also, Flame Sweep is just awful. Lingering Heat is never worth using, as the dot really offers nothing of value to the spec. The class excels at what it does, and to use this talent is to use the spec for something that it's not quite meant for. And lastly, Heat Zone. Now, this is one that is definitely interesting because it's not incredibly bad. One would think, wow, that could be good, but its damage isn't that high. What makes it worth using is the fact that it applies a burn to everyone. On top of that, if you're in a match where people can't survive, so thermal is getting low value, this talent can really help increase damage. I don't recommend it in any case, but it's one of the more fun talents to mess with, simply for the sake of short arenas. Now at 43, we have Advanced Yield. This range is the reason you take this. The reduce cooldown yield is nice, and will add up if you're using on cooldown, but the range is definitely the main reason you're taking it. With this range, you're able to hug any sort of line of sight terrain and annoy pretty much any range player that's camping in one spot. Then you also have Advanced Shielding. This lets you have a higher health cooldown or a longer yield. Personally, I like the higher health cooldown, as it ensures you'll live through it easier. If you're interested in how to properly use defensives, which I will not be covering in this guide, I have a standalone video covering all classes defensives in both 8v8 and 4v4. I'd recommend watch that for that information. It also has other general useful information on how to manage / deal with others' defensives. This talent is often really only taken for arena when there's a lack of proper support roles. Then we have the new and improved Advanced Terminator Droid. This affects both white and yellow damage with a low downtime of only 4 seconds. It also applies a lingering debuff for 3 seconds, which is 2 global cooldowns. If they stay in it for the whole time, the downtime is only 2 seconds due to the lingering effect. This is a great ability for area denial and clump fighting like a Distant Proving Grounds. It does force you to give up a GCD and helps team fight a good bit. However, giving up the range makes you weaker in situations you need to deal with a moving target. Most players will run out of it as they're aware of what it does, much like slam spam, viral elements, and other things. So ultimately, I will always advise advanced yield. Now, getting to 51, I went to Express, nice. Yeah. All right. I want to express my displeasure with the amount of players I see running Pyro Shield. Well, yes, you can make good use of it on AP. You lose out on easier heat management, extra damage, and extra bursts to take it. Gyroscopic alignment jets are incredible, and most players won't be hitting into your shield all the time anyway. One thing to know, for example, when taking gyroscopic, you can let rip nonstop against lightning sorcerers because they will constantly proc it. You can also do it against rage, fury, focus, and concentration because they obliterate and zealous leap, and the regular leaps will do the same, which is vital for the specs and also means any random knockback will also proc this. When it's procced, it increases your ability's damage by 10% for 15 seconds. Only for one ability, however, whenever it gets procced. You can even abuse this talent with hotball events, hotball events, allowing you to get 10% damage amplification for free and venting some heat. 10 out of 10 times, you will likely never change this talent out of its period usefulness. Iron Will is no longer useful because it doesn't reduce the cooldown of hydraulics like it did last expansion, so it's not anywhere near as valuable, including the fact that we have 2cc breakers and the CDR break is just not required. Now at 64, we have an extra passive for AoE, or extra. I'll explain this. So if you get hit, right, and somebody's close to you, you'll proc like a passive, like it's like Cloak of Pain, I guess. It's the best way I can explain it. It's basically like an AoE around you that do damage back to them. For melee range attackers only, well, it definitely helps a little here and there. It's nowhere near as good as the 60% AoE DR for 15 seconds. Nearly always you want Hitman because it allows you to survive those cleave situations you can't seem to get out of. For example, being rooted a whole bunch for some reason. It also lets you embrace them from time to time. This also means classes with rotational AoE will do lower damage to you during it. Suppressive tools I don't really recommend because staying on target on AP is laughably easy. The slow does nothing for you outside of fueling pooled hatred for Juggernauts and Guardians, leaving you more vulnerable in the long run. 68 I won't cover as Hedgehogs are the best ability in-game. In Arena you can take Hard Stun, though I don't recommend it. Then finally reaching 73, I only recommend Efficiency for the second CC Breaker. It also increases the range of grapple and shoulder cannon, which is nice but not the reason we take it. The other two have low value in comparison and don't help us do what we're set out to do. Sonic Rebound is very good and very strong when used well, though that's Arena situation specifically. As an AV, you'll probably waste on something like Force Lightning or Force Storm. Now with talents out of the way, I will go into my gear and what I use after obtaining more 300 item level augments and generally playing around with the class more this expansion. If you cannot afford gold augments, I recommend using my previous setup in my quick PvP guide video, rating as close as to 4800 critical rating, which is near the critical DR for AP. I gain my alacrity from 3 pieces of alacrity on them, and then also running 300 item level alacrity augments to hit closer to the 20 2054, my bad. Threshold for 1.4 GCD. What I mean by 3 lakh pieces is whether it's my enhancements, implants, or earpiece. While more can be better due to GCD lag and generally higher ping, those with lower and not much, if any at all, GCD lag will not really notice a difference. I then hit my accuracy threshold by running 2 accuracy augments, an accuracy stim, and then 1 enhancement being accuracy. This is 300 item level augment, by the way. This allows you to hit 5% accuracy, which I recommend. If you do not want to take accuracy, make sure you hit your 4800-ish critical, as it will be much easier, and run a mastery stem with mastery augs for the rest of your excess stats. Then finally, everything else is being put into critical with focus retribution and serendipitous assault relics. The 3 different tacticals I carry with me outside of Life Ordnance specifically for if I ever care enough are Overwhelming Offense, Power Detonator, and Energize of Vambrace. I swap between these depending on how the queue is, and it's something that'll take experience or preference for which one you settle with the most. Power Detonator is a go-to for most matches, and for all new / still learning, should definitely use them also. Now going into our set bonus implants, we're always running Shock Trooper for the raw damage and heat reduction when this set bonus actually is working. It's another thing that adds to burst windows that we're constantly doing. However, more advanced to constantly be looking at everything for it to fit into the burst window. I would recommend never holding your damage for it, but rather more aware when you last had it. 15-second downtime, which basically means, in the most basic terms, every 3rd rel shot, roughly, it'll come up. If it's perfectly with the spec and everything but its opener. So if you do want to maximize your burst opener a bit more, you can fit Magnetic Blast into the opener, though generally it's overkill and will hurt your sustain after. Then we either have Second Wind, Stimulated, or Mandalorian. Armaments. I don't recommend Mandalorian armaments due to the fact that it hits previous targets quite often, and you have no control of when it goes off, meaning it will hit to reflect, and heals like Enraged Defense. It also has a considerable amount of downtime and enforces the playstyle of always dumping your shoulder cannon for maximum usage. Also, if you're dying quite often, you get completely screwed out of its proc. Now for Stimulated, it's just raw mastery gain, giving you more raw damage. Not much, but it's better than nothing. Most times, Second Wind is a great option simply for the speed and mobility it offers. The fact that it heals you makes it a great implant for solo play, and typically making those 1vx situations or just scraping by situations a lot more comfortable. I'd recommend getting Second Wind as a second implant first, as its usage is more than just AP, it's useful on many specs. Now, with that long-winded talk going slightly off topic here and there, I will say pretty much everything important is covered. As I said before, defensives won't be covered because I have a guide dedicated to DCD management in its entirety of all classes. Specs, and for both AV8 and 4v4. While it may be extremely long, it has timestamps for the relevant information you're looking for. I highly recommend checking out that video when it comes to defensive cooldowns. I then also have a priority target guide, which will help you understand why you're first pick to die in arenas. Most of my guides, even if they are older, still hold very relevant and useful information. This video is the first step in updating them all, so there will be more to come. Now, in my previous guide, I did explain how to deal with each individual class's Powertech and the hypotheticals that came with it. I'll be skipping that here simply to keep the video shorter. If interested, I will have that older guide listed in the comments. Most of that info is not only relevant, but insightful. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will get back to you. If you guys would like to see the same guide, but in the form of Tactics Vanguard with the proper terms for it, I can get it done, as the classes are directly mirrored with no differences. It's not completely needed, but I am willing to do it.